Hey, I'm here with Peter Levin, the managing director of Griffin Gaming Partners. We're here at GDC Festival of Gaming for another episode of The Big Show. Thank you for coming, Peter.
Thank you for having me. It's a
So,
delight.
Peter's reputation precedes itself, certainly, but in case anyone listening to this episode is not familiar with his background, in addition to being the managing director of Griffin Gaming Partners, Peter is also an experienced operator across many different facets of gaming and digital media. He co-founded Nerdist Industries in 2009 and was also a executive at Legendary Entertainment and at Lionsgate. So we're here just to talk about your whole trajectory through this industry. And I think the best place to start would be to discuss what got you into this space in the first place. So what's your origin story as a gamer, Peter?
My origin story as a gamer is I'm a gamer. And so I grew up like I'd say the vast majority of folks attending this conference, playing games, loving games, found it as a delightful outlet for whatever free time that I had. I was fortunate back in 1998. I was running a very small pledge fund at the time, and we made a handful of investments. And the first check I ever wrote on behalf of this micro fund was into GameSpy Industries. And I invested in GameSpy because I was following the Warren Buffett mantra of invest in things that you know, like, and use. And I was a rabid consumer of their platform. And that company almost went away, I think, 4 times over the 4 years we were invested. And then it ended up selling to IGN and then News Corp. And that really jump-started my kind of profile as like, who's the wacky guy in LA that's investing in games businesses when really people weren't. And when the investment was first made into GameSpy, and in that small pledge fund, I might add, I invested in Applied Semantics, which became AdSense for Google. I think it was the only acquisition that Google made pre-IPO that was half cash, half stock. Ask Jeeves, which ended up selling to IAC, and Adam Shockwave, which ended up selling to Viacom. I don't think I've ever had returns like I did in this little micro fund, and we've been doing pretty okay with Griffin. But I think once that investment was made in GameSpy, I was asked by some of the larger general funds, like, hey, would you be the independent board member serving on some of our games investments in parts of Europe, Middle East, Israel? And so that's kind of how I learned from, I think, some of the best VCs in the world about some of the things they do incredibly well. But then I also figured out as a serial entrepreneur operator that there are things that I could do that could kind of aid and abet the efforts of these entrepreneurs and founders and companies in a way that, traditional VC, they're just not capable of, or they're not set up, I should say, or established to prosecute against.
So let me ask, do you still think of yourself as that weird guy who's investing in games, or is everyone that weird guy investing in games now? How has the environment changed since those early days?
Yeah, look, I'm a guy who owns 500,000 trading cards, right? Like I just got a text before this podcast, an angry text from my wife. Last night, I got a box of One Piece. I think it's OP-15, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover with Magic. I got a box of that. I mean, I'd say every 2 or 3 days, I'm in receipt of trading cards. So, I am still very much that guy. If you come to our offices, which are kind of well known in the industry, it's all arcade games that are results of deals that I have done, and toys, big sideshow collectibles pieces. Like we wear it on our sleeve as a badge of honor that we are of, by, and for the culture. So we're acutely aware of this fact and celebrate it.
But does that stand out as much nowadays? Or do you feel like the industry is caught up with you to some extent? Like they don't view what you're doing as unusual or weird. It is really just kind of the blueprint for investment in this business to some extent.
I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that, right? So I still think there are some folks who look at the size of the industry and its growth trajectory and the size of some of the markets that are still yet to be maximized. And they look at it incredibly commercially and opportunistically. And I think those are the firms that usually flame out. But yes, for the most part, people are able to celebrate their fandom in a way that they probably couldn't in the past, or at least they were, given a hard time. Whereas now, it could not be more mainstream.
Yeah.
The numbers are absolutely gobsmacking. When you think about Steam this month will do 10 billion hours of experiences on platform. Netflix will do 9 billion, right? Like those, you throw those numbers out at people, it's larger than film, music, and publishing combined. these are things I talk about often. So I think it is now, no longer, stigmatized whatsoever.
I have to say, I love that you went you immediately went to trading cards and tabletop gaming in a sense when I asked you about your bona fides as a nerd, because that's where I come from as well. I'm by far more of a tabletop gamer nowadays than I am a video gamer, although I think that they're rooted in the same culture, as you pointed out. So I am just going to ask you some personal questions about trading cards.
Let's do it.
What's your most prized card? If you had to pick one.
I mean, I think and none of this is kept at home. It's all in a safe deposit box, so nobody can try to.
I was actually thinking that when I asked this question.
But I'm packing heat too, so bring it.
Noted.
I think on the TCG side, I've got both sets of the Pokemon Mario Luigi crossover. So so there's 4 cards in total. I have those PSA 10s. So those are probably my like ride or die cards. And then on the sports side, I've got a bunch of valuable Jordans, none of which are at home, and some great Kobe product.
Wow. Okay, I'm impressed. And do you play Magic as well? Do you use
I used to play Magic, now I just collect. But our team is like we have a Magic the Gathering tournament here at GDC. If you want to play, tomorrow.
This is an official event at GDC?
It's an official Griffin.
Wow.
Oh, it's a thing.
I should have brought a deck.
We have like Chris Cox, CEO of Hasbro, has showed up to it. Oh, it's full on. And then the winners of that tournament, we take them to MagicCon in Vegas, for the World Championship.
Wow.
So like, it's no joke. Like but I just collect now. I have like every crossover, every collab they've done in the last whatever through Secret Lair. I mean, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle product is awesome. I love the Final Fantasy product, was awesome. The Fallout product was awesome. God of War, awesome. I mean, Lord of the Rings,
just perfect. Yeah, Lord of the Rings was my favorite set they've released in quite some time. I'm a Magic player, so I appreciate this.
You should come tomorrow. We'll talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, well, put a pin in that one. What format is the tournament?
I'm not going to reveal that here. I'll talk to you.
Okay, fair enough. So let's go back to some of the investment decisions that you've made over the years. So you told me the other day that you have learned more from some of your losses than from your wins, and I thought that was an astute observation. So I just wanted to take this time to ask you if you could share a specific example of an investment that didn't work out for you and how you learned from that and applied that to your future investments or your approach to the space in general.
I think, one that hurt a lot when I was a co-founder and CEO of Nerdist Industries. And I had as an advisor, both the CEO founder of Daily Candy, which ended up selling to Comcast, and then the co-founder CEO of Thrillist, both of which had email newsletters, and which was kind of all the rage at the time. So we had our Nerdist News daily newsletter for our cohort, and in talking to them both, it was Ben Lair and Pete Scheinbaum, I decided we had a national newsletter, and then they would do regional newsletters in cities, micro markets, and I felt like that could be applicable to our consuming constituency. And after talking to our brand and advertising partners, they thought it could be compelling as well. And that failed. And, I'm not, that wasn't going to bring the company, it wasn't going to take it down, but it was a harrowing couple of quarters. So I think one of the things I learned early on, both as an operator and as an investor, is you've got to you can't throw good money after bad. And if something is not working out, you need to be self-aware and disciplined and be able to, unfortunately put it on the shelf and move on. And so we had to shut those regional outlets down. We had to let people go, and that's never easy. But yeah, I mean, the point I was making was you learn a hell of a lot more from your mistakes than your wins, because they don't feel good. And like, you don't want to not feel good. So the wins feel great. So you want more of that, and you want less of, not feeling great.
How would you approach that with, the owner or the founder of the company that you invested with? Are there words of consolation that you can, because this is useful advice for you as an investor. You learn from the mistakes that you make. Can the founder of a company that is a mistake also learn and grow from that?
You, optimally, yes. I think you've got to be really careful with whom you write a check into as their business. I've had entrepreneurs that said all the right things, and we cross-referenced them, and their background checks came out spotless, but at the end of the day, they couldn't get out of their own way. And if you become religious about an idea, versus practical, that could be really dangerous. And so I've seen it go, both ways, and there's only so much you can do as a minority investor.
And I think that point about, just being so caught up in an idea or a concept is something that we have seen repeatedly in the gaming industry and in digital media over the last few years. This is something that we've discussed, the rise and fall of these hype cycles, from things like blockchain to the metaverse, which we can debate whether that's still happening or not. And esports, of course. How do you and also your team at Griffin stay aloof of all of the hype cycles and ensure that whatever you are investing in is not one of these flashes in the pan?
Yeah, look, we've made some investments in Web3. I mean, not a lot, and it's an nth percentage of our AUM. At the time, at that particular moment, everybody was excited about what the prospect could mean. I'm still believe removing friction from the economy, of the ability to buy, sell, and trade goods, it's ridiculously laden with friction right now, and that has to change over time. Someone who plays Call of Duty religiously, the fact that I can't buy, sell, and trade weapons or skins, it's wild. I have to go off platform. So I think eventually that will change. I think, but yes, we've seen folks, we're going to raise on the esports hype cycle. We're going to be an XR, AR, VR fund. We're going to be, the metaverse was a term I hated from go. I was very vocal about it on panels. I never invested in VR. Even when I was running the games division at Lionsgate, where every one of my peers, I'd be up on these panels with people that were like, their titles were, I'm a futurist. I'm like, okay, well, I have a P&L. And so, at the end of the day, no one wants VR to work more than us. It expands the TAM. It makes our industry larger. It's just not ready for prime time. And I think VR is consistently 5 years away from being 5 years away. And so I think because we play games, I think, we have as deep an analytical bench as anyone in the world, for our industry. You've got to look at the data and be disciplined, and realize that these hype cycles, have always been proximate to gaming. They go way, way back. And so we, I think having checks and balances, my co-founder, fellow MD, Nick Trosto, he has an investment banking background. I think he's one of, the biggest strategic brains in our industry. And there are times where if you're a founder, you'll walk in and pitch me like, I'm an entrepreneur, right? I'm a founder myself, and I'll get caught up in what, yes, you and we're going to run through this wall at 150 miles an hour. And I'll bring it back to Nick and I'll say, that's great, but here's why there will be zero buyers for it. And there are zero strategics that'll be interested in it. Or, share some strategic insight of, what he sees on his side of the conversation in the market. And I think having that type of DNA as a firm where, all voices can be heard, regardless of, how new you are or where you are in your career trajectory, that's super important.
So with all that said, and, $1 million question, what are the current buzzwords in gaming right now that you are more skeptical about? What do you, the hype cycles of today, as it were?
I think, look, the AI of gaming has embraced AI forever, right? NPCs have been around for 15 plus years, right? So I think the problem that I see, we have tons of companies that will come in and present that have no bona fides in AI. But they'll create one or two slides in their deck, right?
Of course.
This is their, and all this, and then they're going to,
and they would have called it machine learning 2 years ago, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I think, that's silly, right? We've made several investments in this space, and, I hope at the end of the day, that we have remained as disciplined as we try to be across, any and all emerging pockets of opportunity. But you want people who have the bona fides, that both on paper, reference checking, vision, form factor opportunity in the market, that they're checking all those boxes. So I think it's just because I've been doing it so long. I was investing for 20 years off my personal balance sheet before Griffin. And so when I got caught up in hype cycles early on, I could ill afford to write those checks off, and I had to. So I think that for me trained that muscle of making sure you park your ego at the door. You're talking to everyone and anyone that you can, not to get so, again, religious about, any topic, and try to be as grounded as possible.
I'll ask you, on the flip side, what are the big potential growth areas of gaming? And especially, I think we should note as gaming bleeds into other areas of culture, whether it's things like Hollywood, certainly sports fandom is part of it. Are there other ways that companies in this space can grab onto that and grow without giving up ground to other areas of culture?
Yeah, look, I've spent, I don't talk about this much, but I'm going to start talking about it more because it's where, the puck is going, which is phenomenal for us and for me personally, just for my own personal proclivities. But, I was investing in sports for 25 years before Griffin as well, off my personal balance sheet. And I was an early advisor, very active advisor and investor in Strikeforce, which we sold to the UFC, World Golf Tour, which we ended up selling to Topgolf, multiple minor league baseball franchises, the group within which I had invested with a 690% ROI, right? So I put some really nice runs on the board and also some things that didn't work out. The arena football team in Chicago, 2006 world champs, I might add. I'm a small investor in Swansea City over in Wales that got, relegated shortly after I invested.
It happens.
But I think if you look at legacy media right now, and if you look at the monies that are being deployed in the world of sport, because it's an audience that you can defend, they will show up for programming. They work on Madison Avenue, right? Your brand partners, your marketing partners, your advertisers, they're going to continue to support because the numbers continue to grow. And so when you look at the demise of broadcast television, those numbers are scary. The demographics are wildly unattractive to Madison Avenue. They've got to find places to deploy capital, and sport is one of them. And if you look at the gamification of sport, if you look at the opportunities, just the sheer numbers, again, you've got the obvious players, PGA 2K, you've got Madden, right? You've got FIFA,
NCAA,
UFC.
Yeah.
There are so many opportunities to create different genres, to bring, again, delight to these audiences that love this intersection of gaming, media, and sport, and they're just being underserved.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, without getting into too many specifics, I mean, I'm very excited to see what EA is going to be doing more on this front. And I think, obviously FIFA, the organization, has a lot kind of cooking on the sports game front as well. So I think 2026 will be an interesting year for this space in multiple ways.
Well, if you look at football, soccer, and just the mass appeal globally, and how few real offerings there are. Football Manager, obviously, what EA had been doing, traditionally, and now FIFA, splintering off into, a variety of different form factors, but just combat sports, it's the third fastest growing sport in the world, and there's really only one big game, EA, MMA or the UFC title, and there's just so much opportunity there.
Pickleball has something to say about UFC being the fastest growing sport in the world.
I said third fastest.
Oh, third. Oh, excuse me. That checks.
But I don't think pickleball is in front of it. I think volleyball is actually, believe it or not, and women's volleyball globally is huge.
Oh,
but yes, pickleball is. I'm not playing a pickleball video game anytime soon. I'm not judging if you are. It's just not.
I feel like playing pickleball is the alternative. I'll play a tennis video game if I want to experience that, but I digress. Let's talk a little bit about, this is a topic related to the hype cycles, but it's more on the investment end. Something else that we discussed the other day was this concept of tourist capital in gaming.
Yeah.
Different entities coming in and injecting their capital into gaming, not getting the quick return that they want and leaving, and gaming companies really being the ones that suffer. And I want to credit you guys for being endemic to this space at Griffin, and I think being a great example of an investor that is not using the tourist approach. Can you give us any pointers on how to identify what might be a tourist investor versus not? And also just what the markers for real sustainable investment are?
Look, I don't want to besmirch anybody. I think the generalist funds where you've got one or two people on platform that are passionate about gaming, but may not necessarily have the backgrounds either as an operator or an investor, in in the industry that are super excited about it, but they don't have the analytical rigor or the resources that are consistently deployed. And, keeping your finger on the pulse, like, daily, real time on, tectonic shifts that are happening in the industry, and they're happening right now. I think that would be really challenging to be successful. And so again, when you're at a zenith moment, right, when the whole world is celebrating gaming kind of post-COVID, I think that's an easy sell. But I think when, people have to go back to school and they're going back to work and they're not playing as much as they were before, you have IDFA being deployed by Apple and, that cannibalizing some of what was happening in mobile. The mobile's back strong, like stronger than ever right now because the innovation that propagated. So I think that was a little bit of kind of, shooting themselves in the foot with that strategy. But I think for us, look, this is all we do. We do gaming deals and things that are gaming adjacent. And, very obviously, again, at this intersection of kind of gaming, sport, IP, and media. But we're never going to get outside of our wheelhouse. I mean, it would be ridiculous for me to think that, I could invest in telemedicine, right? Or, when the cannabis thing was a thing, right? And, those funds were popping up, right? I mean, there's so many of them. Biosciences, like, I bring nothing to the military software. I mean, I wish, I knew more about that because some of that stuff's super duper cool, but I don't. And so, it would be silly for me to put on an expert hat and say, yeah, you should invest with me because I'm going to do one or two of these a year without the analytical rigor behind it. I think, again, at a zenith moment versus, nadir moment when the market has somewhat course corrected, it's less sexy. You have a lot of people that, perhaps they came from real estate or energy or crypto. Well, they're going to go back and make sure that, that portfolio is intact and that they're watching their own house.
So with that in mind, and you've mentioned zeniths, you mentioned nadirs. This is an acknowledgement that investment and this business in general, it always works in cycles, and there's upturns and there's downturns. And I would say when it comes to investment and fundraising right now, we are definitely in a downturn. There's been a pullback, I think, from a lot of entities in terms of investment, particularly in new game makers. From where you stand, and I'm not asking you to pull out a crystal ball, is this moment that we're in just a normal down cycle, or is there something different about this situation that, is that we need to be more serious about addressing?
Look, it feels no more different to me than whether it's down cycles or a moment where there's less enthusiasm to invest within the sector. I've always been kind of heads down. We're seeing some of the best deal flow we've ever seen, some of the most talented operators, and a lot less competition for capital. So if you can't create opportunities out of bumpy markets, you have no business investing in a sector, right? I mean, we have some incredibly sophisticated investors that have told us from day one, like, make your hay now. Like, this is where you need to get after it. You guys have the chops, you have the experience, you have the track records, and having the trust of the founders and them knowing that you'll be with them through thick and thin. I mean, you're not going to do anything silly, but you're not going to get scared off by, a bumpy market. As big as the industry is and has gotten, it's still super fraternal. And everyone talks. So, if you're there to support your founders, if you do the things that we do, I spend a tremendous amount of time with my portfolio company founders at this intersection of gaming and media and sport, and helping to facilitate, relationships and not just connect, but kind of interpret. That's a very hands-on value add. I call it, if you throw up the bat signal as a founder, we're going to be there. We're going to do everything we can to, help collapse business development and corporate development cycles, et cetera. So, no, I don't think it's any different. I'm ever the optimist. I'm a glass half full person. And, we plan to be doing this for our entire careers.
That's an encouraging answer. I like that. All right. I'm going to end with a fun lightning round question. So no pressure on this one, but what's your current game rotation? What's your favorite thing to play right now after a long day?
Playing a lot of Battlefield 6 right now with my team. I still play Call of Duty very regularly. I have to play test a lot of my so I can't name these games because some of them are in a closed beta in micro markets. But I spent a lot of time doing that, and there's a few in particular that I love to play. So I'm super excited about that.
Well, you know where to find me when you're ready to talk more about them. So sounds like we have more to discuss in the future. But Peter, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down for an episode, especially given all the chaos of GDC. And it was a real pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me.